Hey friends, welcome to another episode right here on URF TV. We have the best guests and we continue to deliver right here on this show. Today it is Mark Winokur. He's a rugby consultant and also a beloved member of the United Rugby Fans team right in Canada. And I want to know first, how did you find yourself in Canada?
Long story. I mean, I think without going into the details, my parents moved there when I was just going into college and have done quite a bit of time back in the United States, back and forth over the last couple of years, but mostly reside here and really like it.
That's awesome. It's a beautiful part of the world. Absolutely beautiful part of the world. I don't travel there enough and I need to get back because I love it so much. Where,
Well, you might want to skip this time
oh,
of year because
for
you got
sure. For sure.
plenty of snow, plenty of snow.
For sure. This time of year I'm going to stay right here in LA. Trust me. I don't
Good,
like to travel outside of LA this time of year.
good plan.
When did your love for rugby begin?
A very long time ago, and I won't specify that because that gives away too much information. But I played football as a kid, growing up in New Jersey, Little League, high school, all that good stuff. And then played football in college, once I moved to Canada. And I was kicking a football because one of my positions was kicker. Threw some goalposts at a local field one day, and a guy came up to me and said, "Do you know anything about rugby?" And I said, "Not really." He said, "Well, it'll really get you fit for football." And I said, "Cool." And he goes, "Well, come on in the clubhouse and let's have a talk." So a quart of beer and a signed piece of paper later, that got me going on the journey, and ran along both those tracks for a while, and then chose rugby in the end.
He tricked you into it, and I love it so much because it worked to all
Coerced, yeah,
right. He coerced, lovingly coerced.
right.
And that's a benefit for all of us. Absolutely. What were your first impressions of rugby in Canada at that time?
Well, I think what I thought was so cool about it was the culture was so much more welcoming than football, for one thing, and secondly, the fact that you got to do all kinds of different things. Like you got to catch the ball and pass the ball and kick the ball, and you weren't just in football blocking somebody or tackling somebody or catching a ball every 20 plays. You were fully involved all the time. So both those things intrigued me, and kept them going over the years.
That's something else I truly appreciate about rugby. I have a lot of girlfriends who have sons that are now ready
Mm.
to, really get into sport, and a lot of them want to play football. And my girlfriends are coming to me and they're like, "Stace, I don't know, like I don't feel comfortable letting him play football." And I said, "I get that. There's injuries in every sport. I mean,
Sure.
my worst injuries were in fast pitch softball. That's not even a contact sport." But
Right.
I tell my friends, I said, if you don't want them to play football, give rugby a look.
Sure.
It looks scarier because there's no padding, no helmet, but because there's no padding, no helmet, they really know how to tackle appropriately. And also the culture and the lifelong friendships that come from rugby. It's just so incredibly special.
Oh, it is, and I think that's one of rugby's challenges is that it doesn't lean into that cultural differentiation enough. We don't explain. We say, "Hey, come watch the game because it's a cool game," but we don't talk about how great the culture is. And listen, I still know. I don't want to again give away years, but I've known people for decades that were on my first rugby team. You
Ah,
know.
so cool. Well, you've got me to push the cultural narrative because it's one of the sports I didn't play and I'm hooked on
Mm,
it mostly because of the culture. That
mm,
the way refs are treated, the way they treat each other, there's just
mm,
so many beautiful aspects to the game that transcend sport. And I think that makes
mhm.
it extraordinary.
Yeah, true.
What are your impressions of rugby in Canada today?
Um, we have a lot of challenges. It's a very, very large country. It's very expensive to travel around. Um, we have, the great one of the great things about rugby is the tribalism, and one of the worst things about rugby is the tribalism. You know,
Yeah.
it makes for great rivalries and matchups and all that kind of thing, but there's a lot of people, operating in silos or following their own agenda that doesn't. There's not a clear, unified national goal, which is understandable given the size and the different seasons and the different geographies of the country. But It's I think that we had, COVID was very, very hard on Canada rugby wise, and I think we're recovering from that, but it's a slow process.
Yeah. Well, also, when anyone thinks of Canada, ice hockey is the pillar of the cultural community there.
Mm. Hmm.
In what ways can people continue and yourself continue to grow rugby in that country?
Well, again, we have to lean into the things that we have that are unique, which is culture, which is getting people out involved in the game, which is elevating the image of it. I think this is true in the U.S. as well. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, rugby was kind of considered a party where a game might have broke out. And I think at this point, it's better explained as the game is very difficult to play, very challenging, very skillful, very hard, and the party is also legendary.
It
Um,
truly is.
so I think we've got to really, really work harder at telling that story. And I think people get caught up in, well, I got to win this Saturday's game, and not so much in explaining why you need to even care about who wins the Saturday's game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something else I find fascinating about rugby that I tell my friends is unlike other sport, when the coach is right there on the sidelines with you,
Hmm.
they entrust their athletes. They have training all week and then they entrust their athletes. Yeah, there's communication from the coach in his box or
Hmm.
wherever he's sitting,
Sure.
but the fact that coaches entrust their players to carry out and execute what they worked on all week, in what ways does that really give these athletes an extra boost of confidence? And also, they can take that into daily life. How does that play?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the difference between having a boss at the office who leans over your shoulder and says, change that line, you know, add in those numbers, and somebody who just says, here's the assignment, do your best, give it to me at the end, and let's see what it is. And I think that that's another great thing about rugby that I really enjoyed was I wasn't being coached every second of every game or second guessed or criticized. You got out there and you did your thing, and at the end of 80 minutes, you were exhausted and you either succeeded or you didn't, but it was on your own merits.
I love that. When you think about the state of the professional rugby game, how have you seen professional rugby change the game overall?
Well, that's a good question because I did play towards the end of the amateur era, and have gone through professional, the professional game, and I think that one of the biggest challenges is that professional rugby has somewhat disconnected itself from the communities from which it came, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I think that trying to run as many teams have found, especially here in North America, trying to run a professional team absent a community structure underneath it is very difficult.
Mm. How,
Where, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please finish.
So, I think that professional rugby at the moment needs to really reconnect with the communities that it's located in and stop treating, not stop treating, but be more inclusive of them as part of their program rather than just people who could pay money to come see the game.
Hmm.
I think that's a direction that fans are such a huge part of the game, and having them outside the fence, as it were, is not helpful, and it's not even rugby. Rugby is one of the few sports where you can connect with the players after the game.
Mm-hmm.
So why not build that community all the way up and down? So
Why do you think that's lost? Is it trying to protect those players? What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of things. It's a combination of other people from other professional sports coming into rugby and saying, well, this is how we do it in the NFL. This is how we do it in the NBA. This is how we do it in the Premier League in soccer. This is how we do it. They're not the same thing. Rugby is a unique sport. It's an open culture, and the less you embrace the local community and the local culture, the less success you're going to have,
Hmm.
in my view.
I agree with that. Along these same lines, Mark, when if I were to give you the title of boss for a day, You've
That'd be
mentioned,
nice.
I know, right? Same. You have to return the favor at some point.
Mm.
So you're overlooking all of rugby and all of the world for a day. You've mentioned some things, and you can please re-highlight those if you wish. What would you change?
Well, I mean, the first of all, international rugby is not aligned really with anything, and that's tough.
Mm.
International rugby needs to better align with the clubs. The clubs need to better align with their communities. I mean, that's a very oversimplified view of it, but those are the things that I would say are our first mandate to start looking at. If that
Any,
makes sense.
yeah, it does. Gosh, how can you run that back? Can you reverse what's been changed? Because I'm still stuck on what you said, and you're so right. When other, big entities and NFL, NBA, MLS, they say, "Oh, we would never let fans on the field, on the court," and
Right.
that makes sense if you're from that space. But like you also pointed
Sure.
out, rugby is so completely different. It was born of people being able to come on the pitch and shake their favorite players' hands. That's one of the beautiful,
100%.
right? Such a beautiful gift. I remember when I covered my first game ever in San Diego, I was floored when all these fans were coming on the pitch. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're security. But then right? But I quickly realized that was part of the beauty of the sport. And then also I just sat back and observed. I observed these players who just played their hearts out, blood, sweat, and tears, literally on the pitch. They're exhausted. But they stop and they take photos and they sign autographs and they shake hands and they tell these kids, if you want to be a rugby player one day like me, play hard, show up, be disciplined. Like, it was so cool. So if the international game has been detached, if we need to get back to community first, how is that something that can be reversed and get back to the way it was?
I don't know that it needs to be reversed. I think what needs to happen is um, to put more emphasis on the communities that these clubs are in. And when you're starting a club, you need to bring the community with you. I mean, making this up, if I were awarding a expansion franchise in at MLR, if somebody came to me and said, "Look, I'm from such and so, you know, second tier Midwestern market, and I want to come into MLR, and I've got the money and I love it and blah blah blah," I would say to them, "Great, awesome. You got a facility, you got the money, you have some rugby knowledge. What's underneath you? Is there junior rugby? Is there high school rugby? Is there college rugby? If there's not, then that needs to be part of your development program. That needs to be baked in to your proposal. Is we're going to bring a community with us rather than we'll go there and then we'll kind of maybe send out a couple of season ticket flyers and that'll be it."
Mm.
Which is, I think, somewhat what's happened to date somewhere.
That's really encouraging. I like hearing you say it doesn't have to be reversed. Just needs to be baked in. Like, we can add
Right.
it any moment at any time, and that's very encouraging.
Mhm.
You mentioned MLR. I'm a little familiar with that, and expansion teams, and it's been such an up and down experience with MLR. But I still truly believe it can be something and is something very special. The product on the
Mhm.
pitch is great, as long as we're putting forward great television. Like, there's just so many beautiful things that can continue to happen,
Sure.
and I want to do everything I can to continue to grow that league. Tell us how you were involved directly in MLR and especially in Toronto.
Yeah. So I co-founded along with Bill Webb, the late Bill Webb, the team in Toronto. We came basically out of the Ontario provincial team that played in the Canadian Championships, and we had a good run. We had a million things happen to us that are very unique and will probably never happen again. Um,
Like sharing a
but
pitch with Atlanta for a whole season or for the first half of a
yeah,
season? Yeah.
yeah, no, the full season. So we got off to a great start in 2019, made the playoffs our first year.
Yep.
2020, we were in first place when COVID hit. 2021, in order to stay alive, we had to play the whole season based out of a hotel in Atlanta,
Mm.
which, at the time you sort of hope, well, maybe this isn't going to be, an existential event, but it was.
Yeah.
We did not play a home game between June 2nd, 2019, and April 2nd, 2022. And most people can do the math on that. That's 34 months, and that is too long to maintain any market presence, momentum, anything else. And, from there, things just predictably kind of came off the rails. But one of those things.
Yeah, yeah, that was a hard season to say the very least. And
Mm.
at that time, I believe right before COVID took us off, I had Toronto picked to win everything because, and I thought they were going to have to go through DC first because DC was 5-0 at the time. So I was so hopeful and so excited because Toronto was new and they were young and they were feisty and it was just so much fun and they had so much they were, dealing with. And of course, I was heartbroken when they didn't continue forward with MLR, but I'm hopeful that we'll continue to expand and grow back into Canada at some point. And I hope,
Hopefully.
yeah, exactly. I would love to see it. When we think about fans, in what ways, because they can really be game changers. They give the energy that a team needs. They make the noises the team needs. I mean, we can look back at the NBA and WNBA bubbles, and it was hard to watch, right? It was so hard to watch. The fans in the stands were digital, and the
Yeah.
players just kind of meh. It felt more like pickup games.
Mhm.
Fans really do make a difference. Do you think that
Oh, all the difference.
right? So do you think they should have a bigger say in the running of the game? And if your answer is yes, what would that look like?
Well, I definitely think yes. I think that one of the bizarre things is you travel around Canada and the U.S. to a certain extent as well, and most of them are united in their agreement that the game is not being managed, marketed, sold, presented as well as it could be. And what you say in any good business office is you say, hey, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Yeah.
And I think fans need to, one, think about what solutions can they bring, and two, how can we unite to bring those solutions forward.
Mm,
They have more power, I think, than they think. You know,
mhm,
um, given that there's far, far, far more fans, and they're the ones spending the money than there are management people and so on.
mhm.
And I think a coherent effort from fans to say to management, listen, we want to see it go this way within reason. We want to see it go this way. We're willing to help you take it that way, but you got to listen to us.
Mhm.
I don't know that conversation is happening right now, but I think it can and should be.
And to your point earlier, if the community's brought closer to those organizations and given that space around players and teams and coaches and leadership, that could happen. That could happen potentially even quicker, right? Because
Sure.
when you meet fans who have good ideas, we as individuals can't think of everything. Like
No.
even the smartest CEO on the planet can't think of every single angle. So to hear it from a fan who sits in those stands, who spends money and saves money to bring his entire family, that's something that, could be rewarded in such a way and pay dividends for the entire outfit, which I think would be exciting to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what I hear, I'm switching gears on you real quick.
Hmm.
I hear that you still play some touch rugby today, young man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I actually, I still do play some touch rugby, and I actually played a couple of games of contact rugby last year, and just saw my doctor today and told me I was full of arthritis, so should probably not do that. But I think I'm going to choose not to hear that because life is meant to be lived. So
That's right. That is right. I'm proud of you for not listening to that. And obviously, as long as you take care of yourself, keep yourself safe, all the best things. That's so much fun. How do you enjoy playing touch? And how different is it from traditional tackle rugby?
well, listen, of course it's totally different, but the experience is the same. It's a shared experience. You're out there with your buddies. You're throwing a ball around. You're doing stuff. You're chit chatting off the field. You're going for a beer. I think I do it partially because I have spent so much time in the coaching and administration and management of the game
Hmm.
that can be, challenging to say the least. I think getting out there and just throwing the ball around with a bunch of bunch of people it reminds me of what I loved about the game in the first place.
Yeah,
So, you know,
it's community as well. Like that's part of for all of our mental health. I think a lot of people forget the
100%.
yeah, they forget the community piece of how that really pours into our mental health and our positive mental health and well-being. I love that you do that for yourself. I want to touch on what you said in terms of how different, obviously playing versus administrating, leading clubs, getting teams off the ground. How was being a player and is still being connected to the game? How does that make you a better rugby consultant, a better leader for the game of rugby to continue to grow it?
Well, I think that one of the reasons the rugby culture, believe me, I will get to the point. One of the reasons why the rugby culture is the way it is because I think everybody who meets another rugby player, the first thought in their head is, okay, he's done it. He's been out there on a, 88-degree summer afternoon, one point in the last minute, sweating, no more breath in his lungs. He's been hit. He's been smashed. He's gone through cold days, horrible training sessions. There's a mutual respect for having done that, and I think that once you've done that and been through that, then you understand the culture of the game. And once you understand the culture of the game, it's a lot easier to administer it. I think, things like, well, do you need to send senior management to the airport to pick up the player who's coming in, or do you get an intern to do it? Rugby, mostly it's senior management, the teams I've been on. Other teams, it's, some 22-year-old college intern who's doing it to just be part of it. And I think it's that respect and that admiration for other people's support of the game that's the unique part of the rugby culture. So, I think I don't want to say that you can't be, a successful person in rugby unless you played it, but it certainly helps.
I like that. I like that visual of having senior management, because if it's a player who's moving his entire family, her entire family across the world
Sure.
to play for a professional team, having senior management show up, you just feel so supported and you feel like, okay, this is going to be worth it. This is worth it. And I like that visual very much. And I'm glad that that's something that you can share with others who are in those positions and can hopefully pass that on and make that happen. Looking back on your rugby journey, what are some of your most memorable stories? Anything really super funny happen?
Oh yeah, well, listen, there's been great moments. I think probably the funniest moment we ever had was with the Ontario team in Argentina, and we played one of the provincial teams there, and beat them. And they did an interview with the star player, the player of the game, after the game on Argentine TV, and the hosts and the announcers, naturally they spoke English, but with a fairly strong Spanish accent. And this player said he started answering the questions with a Spanish accent, even though he was not Spanish and didn't speak Spanish. And we said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I thought they could understand me better."
That's
I think
precious.
that was a capper. I mean, some of the other ones I can't repeat on this show. I think,
It would take a 2-drink minimum to share. I get it.
I would say, yeah.
That is hilarious, that story. Oh my goodness. How did you respond when you heard that?
I think we were just off to the side, and I think we were just rolling around on the ground laughing too hard to respond in any way. I won't say his name. I'll spare him the.
That's fair.
Dignity.
That's fair. That's fair. A lot of people, I think, assume. I love that story that we're starting with a fun story, and we don't need to talk about injuries or anything like that. But I want your viewpoint from people that think rugby is so dangerous because there is no head protection, body protection, and it is dangerous. Listen, any contact sport is, and it's you're going to have some injuries. But what do you say to those folks that are like, "Oh my gosh, no, I'm too afraid of it. I'm too scared to play rugby"? What would you say to them?
Well, it looks a lot worse than it is, you know. And I listen, I've been in games where I've come off the bench as a substitute and you know sort of sat there. Wow, this looks like a crazy hard game. But the minute you're out there, it's well, this is just the same as every other game.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the other thing that people need to understand is, you know, compared to football, football is a deliberate contact game, you know, and it's morphed into this game where players use their shoulder pads, helmets, elbow pads, etc., as weapons to initiate contact. You can't do that in rugby.
Yeah.
You know, my old coach in football used to say, "You want to get a hat on that guy," which means get your helmet, you know, right into his chest. Well, you can't do that in rugby.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, I think once you explain to people, no, rugby is really an evasion game that has contact in it, and you get to manage the contact because you can't use anything as a weapon. So, you know, I think once people understand that concept, and you look at all the NFL teams now bringing in rugby players to coach them on tackling, I think that's a big sales point.
Hmm. And that was one of the first things I learned. I did some work with the women's U.S. Eagles, and it was so much fun because I got to learn how to tackle. I was actually lifted in a line out. That was awesome. So I just, man, it's so neat to be part of this culture and this sport, to just learn so much. And I love telling everyone else about it. Anyone that will listen, I love to tell them about rugby because it's
Right.
unique and special, you know, all the things that we talked about already. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Any questions that you've not been asked by anyone in your time in rugby thus far that you would like to expand on or share?
Not, no, you know, listen, I talk about it all the time, all day, every day. But, you know, I think that, um, I think rugby is going through a difficult period right now. And I think that what people need to understand is we are far better united as a fan group, as clubs, as players, as administrators, working together to build the game than rather than everybody having a separate agenda. And I think that's a leadership right from the top. I think it's, you know, it's a bunch of things. But, you know, when I look at the opportunity that rugby has to build its culture as such a positive thing, we need to do more of that. You know, we need to remember why we're doing that.
I agree. Is that part of the reason that you joined the team at United Rugby Fans and volunteer your time and became a member? Why is that important to you?
You know, because I again, as I've said, and as Mark Philpott also says, um, the fans are the largest group that there is in rugby. I mean, if there's 80,000 people at Twickenham, there's only 46 people down on the field playing it. And those 80,000 are paying for tickets and paying for beers and so on. And that doesn't mean they get to make every decision because they're not qualified to do it. They're not
Right.
out there. They're not the ones chosen,
Right.
but they have a voice, and people need to listen to those voices. And I think that, you know, a lot of the sport governing body does not do a great job of that. I don't think the professional franchises, some do. And you can tell the ones that are successful. And, you know, in microcosm, look at MLR. The ones who engage the community the most are the ones that are most successful. That's not an accident. So, you know, yeah, I think when Mark talked to me about doing this, I said, listen, anything that gives um, the people who love the game a greater voice, you know, I'm happy to help.
Hmm. That was my response as well. And just growing the
Good.
game in general and educating people that don't know. Man, I can't let you go without. I know people have been wondering, looking at you. They know you travel a lot, but how on earth did you get to space today? I need your secret. I need to get on that.
Well, you know, I think it came from goofing around with the Zoom settings at like a minute before the show and
And then I
landing on
started recording. I trapped
right,
you.
yeah, then landing on that one and saying, you know what, let's go with that.
I love
I can safely say I'll never get there. So
it. I love that. Can you tell us if there's actually life on another planet? Just kidding.
I'd be willing to bet there is, but
I agree. I agree. I agree. Oh man. Well, it's such a joy, Mark Winokur. Thank you for everything that you do for this sport and will continue to do for this sport. And anyone that I talk to that has played this game, has been involved in this game, they love giving back and they love being
Hmm.
part of it. And I'm the same way. And I didn't even play this game, but I'll do anything I can to give back because I believe in it and I see the heart in it. And I think there's a lot of pro sports, a lot of sports in general that we touched on this earlier that just want to make money or just want to make a name for themselves, just want to be famous. But there's also such a huge group of people that just do everything for the love of the game and the love of their teammates. And I think that's extraordinary.
I do too, and I think that's again, something unique about rugby that we really have to, carry the torch for. I mean, we're all sort of rugby evangelists, so
Oh, I love that term. You're exactly right. That is exactly what we are. And Mark, you know what they say, fans first.
rugby forever.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye now.
All right.